And before we get into Iran, before we get into the economy, Webster Tarpley, I want to get his view on the article I just read and why he thinks Glenn Beck is doing this. What do you think's going on, Webster?
Well, Alex, I haven't really seen this article that you're talking about, but I can tell you a few things about Glenn Beck in general and maybe draw some historical parallels. I think the most important thing you have to say about Glenn Beck is that he's a scoundrel, and I don't normally start off with insults, but that's if you don't establish the fact that he's an unprincipled scoundrel, and really, this is really deplorable what this guy does on television. He's obviously a creature of Rupert Murdoch. In other words, this reactionary, quasi-fascist Australian millionaire who's taken over this, Fox News empire, and his friend there, Roger Ailes, who has credentials going back to the Nixon campaign and even to the campaigns of Bush the Elder in Texas and elsewhere. They're the ones who put Glenn Beck on the air. Now, if you go back to the 1930s, you had similar figures, right? You had this guy, Father Coughlin, the radio priest, and the message from Father Coughlin, the radio priest, was that basically Hitler was not as bad as you thought. Hitler was really a good guy. The main enemy was Stalin, so he had a whole demagogic thing around this. Glenn Beck is an eclectic. In other words, what he's looking for is what I would call a demagogic synthesis of a whole bunch of elements. And you're very right to say, in my terminology, his job is to co-opt. In other words, he's got to take forms of political ferment, people in motion, people who are upset about Obama. He's got to convoy them back ultimately to the Republican Party. That's his task. He's got to co-opt them. He's got to dupe them. He's got to manipulate them. And then you look at what he offers. This whole format with the chalkboard and the professorial lecture and all these things. The guy's profoundly ignorant. He doesn't know anything. He's basically an alcoholic with intellectual pretensions, right? A dry drunk, in many ways similar to Bush the Younger. Same kind of personality. He's obviously a narcissist. He's got a lot in common with Obama from that point of view. But it's interesting that somebody in this kind of a slot, right, daytime television, 4 or 5 o'clock, would normally not be offering you opinions about Woodrow Wilson or William McKinley, or they had a program lately in praise of Calvin Coolidge, of all people, with an activist from the Council on Foreign Relations. This Calamity Schlaze was there to tell you how great Calvin Coolidge was. Normally these are topics that you don't get on daytime television, but he feels the need to go into this, and you see that it's a departure from normal American politics.
Well, that's because the internet and this show is raising all of these real issues and putting it in a proper historical perspective, and so they're now forced to basically cover this, and they're getting top ratings by doing it. So, I mean, bottom line, Rupert Murdoch wants to steer and control this. He sees it as a lucrative market. But I mean, to have Beck write a book about false flag terror, 7/7 being staged, the Mayak report, an Alex Jones character, and then to say none of this is real at the end, but to say it's real at the first, very bizarre.
I think it's simply designed to confuse people. It's to make people think that they've learned something when, again, I haven't read this book and I don't know the article you're referring to. To confuse them. Hey, listen, Alex, I have some stuff going on with me too. If you listen to Rush Limbaugh these days, he says regime, the Obama regime. This is more or less the language I've been using for 3 or 4 years. And today I heard Limbaugh came out with one of my signature terms, which is reactionary, right? This is something you don't usually hear in the United States. Normally these people, they call themselves conservatives. They're not conservatives. They're reactionaries. That would be Glenn Beck. But Limbaugh says there are reactionary leftists, or leftist reactionaries running around. It's very interesting. He takes a kind of a trope, right? He takes an element of rhetoric, and he redirects it, right? He turns it.
No, we know Limbaugh uses PrisonPlanet.com articles all the time, and now the Drudge Report is linking to our Dr. Paul Craig Roberts articles. I mean, it's just our information is everywhere, and so the system is trying to gauge it and trying to color themselves like us, camouflage themselves so they can pose as anti-establishment to keep the power structure in power.
Right, and this is really dangerous demagogy because, again, you can't get around looking at somebody like Mussolini or Hitler. If we just take Mussolini, The fascist movement at the beginning was considered to be radical leftist in many ways, right? They had socialists in there, they had very militant trade unionists, then they had war veterans, they had intellectuals, and you have to bring them together around this kind of stew, right? This salad of different pieces of analysis drawn from here, there, and everywhere.
Stay there, Tarpley. We got a break. This is how they bind all the groups together, and they've got anti-establishment leftists when Bush was in power posing as patriots. We'll be back. Everything is divide and conquer. Coming up in the next hour, there's a key article that Matt Ryan's written that just went up at Infowars.com, where a black construction worker wasn't even a Muslim. He was working at Ground Zero, and this crowd saw him and chased him, screaming, "Get out of here, Muslim." He's like, "I'm not a Muslim." He was even wearing an American flag, and they chased him, getting very close to something out of Nazi Germany, where they first wouldn't let Jews have businesses and would chase them off the streets. And they're hyping all this up now, right at the time. Oh, Matt Ryan, add to your story Steve Watson's article about Muslim Imam is globalist stooge, Trilateral Commission, CFR, top globalist. It turns out the co-owner of Fox News, this is Associated Press, and Yahoo, this is so incredible, is actually the main contributor to the mosque. And now some black guy wearing an American flag shirt comes walking out of Ground Zero where he's working, and they see him and start chasing him around. I mean, this is incredible what they're doing. Webster, I want to get into Iran, but clearly this builds up towards that hysteria. We've got this key article by Steve Watson that I covered some Friday and Sunday. In fact, guys, reprint that for me. I know it's in the stack, but headline, Ground Zero Mosque Imam, globalist stooge, and it details how he's a top globalist. I mean, Webster, we can really see what's happening here.
But even more directly, this is Imam Faisal Rauf. And it turns out that he's from the FBI. He works for the FBI. He's a trainer for the FBI. He's an advisor for the FBI. He has worked for Bush the Younger in that administration. He's a current employee of the State Department. Now, this is what we would call, in very poor terms, a government agent. And he's out there as an FBI provocateur doing his job, which is to provoke. And now, instead of having, we could have about 95% of this population marching against Wall Street and saying, down with the banks, claw back the bailouts, stop, lower the credit card rates, no more payday loans. You could get about 95% of the American people for that. Instead, we've got these, 60-40, 70-30 things. We've got the New York Mosque, we've got the Arizona illegal alien situation, and, of course, gay marriage in California coming right on the heels of the Shirley Sherrod doctored tape. So what does this mean? That no serious economic issue, none of the life or death economic questions of jobs, employment, wages, the things that people really live or die by, that is all swept aside. So we're having a summer of total programmed insanity, right, of MK Ultra running wild, if you will, through all the mass media. And I urge people, when you see a dog and pony show like this, have the brains not to choose sides. When you see the Yankees playing whatever it is, the other team, right, in the World Series, it's hard not to get sucked in, right? You want to choose sides and become a fan for one side. In this case, don't do it, because this is simply a way to prepare these elections. I think it shows that the ruling elite is in the process of switching their bets from the sinking ship of Obama to some demagogic reactionary Republican. Maybe it's Mitt Romney, but I think much more likely General Petraeus waiting in the wings as the new version of whatever oppression is coming down.
And notice we now have the ADL saying no to the mosque. I mean, this is like right out of Nazi Germany, what they're doing.
Yeah, the thing with the mosque is obviously, if you want to make a gesture of reconciliation, that's a wonderful thing. But unfortunately, this is not turning out to be a gesture of reconciliation. So I would think that it's time really to de-emphasize this. Plus, everybody's arguing about something that, strictly speaking, doesn't exist. In other words, there is no mosque. There really is, even one more building has to be bought.
Well, it's a First Amendment issue, and it's a property right issue, and the fact that this guy's hooked in with the FBI, State Department, Trilateral Commission, CFR, and being funded by the owner of Fox News, I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, but again, it doesn't exist. They don't have the money to do this. They have to buy another piece of property. Then they'd have to build it. This thing is years and years in the future, if at all. I don't.
It's
think
a perfect psychological distraction to create the primitive, animal brainstem threat that, oh my gosh, the foreigners that did 9/11, they've now come to plant their flag at ground zero. It's a propaganda image like Iwo Jima with the troops raising the flag. It's that snapshot image.
Something like that. And remember, these are the wedge issues, right? The hot-button social issues that pit one significant part of the U.S. population against another part, right? The gays against the straights, the Islamic population against the rest of them, or the leftists joining in on the side of the mosque. And so on and so on. It never ends, right? The nativists against the Hispanic immigrants, and Wall Street laughs all the way to the bank because no attacks on Wall Street have been heard for the last 30 or 60 days.
All right, stay there. I want to come back and get into Iran, Webster. That's why you're here. And then the economy, where you see this going, the Knesset coming out over the weekend and saying they're getting ready to hit Iran. It's all coming up. I'm Alex Jones. The websites are Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.tv. Please stay with us. Okay, Tarpley, I'm going to try to shut up now and give you the floor. Who the interests are, this new fake Iraq pull down where they admit they've just renamed the names of the battle brigades, increased the private security firms in a model of control they want in the U.S. with the top secret USA system. We've got them building towards an Iran strike, saying they've got to do it. They said 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago they had to hit Iran before they fueled the reactor, because if they hit it once the rods are in, it could cause a Chernobyl. All of this on the heels of toxic legacy of U.S. assault on Fallujah, worse than Hiroshima. Top scientists admit off-the-charts increases of deformities and deaths from the DU used in Fallujah. Our troops that rolled in after the assault, they're dying and having massive health problems. This is just incredible, and now they want a whole new war. So, Webster, break it all down for us and where your intel and research shows we're going.
Well, I guess first of all that we've now got the third anniversary of the Rogue B-52. You'll remember this: a Rogue B-52 strategic bomber with 6 nuclear-armed cruise missiles was essentially hijacked by the Cheney faction, this rogue network. Again, it's not the U.S. government; it's out of the control of the U.S. government and into a Wall Street-controlled network, the one that Cheney happened to be the spokesman for there for a while. But Cheney may be gone, but this thing goes on. And you remember it went from North Dakota to Louisiana, and then it was going to go on to the Middle East. This was right before the September 7th Israeli air raid on Syria, which, according to the Israelis at least, destroyed a nuclear reactor. I'm still skeptical about that. But you got to think about this. The Rogue B-52, and there never was a congressional investigation. There's never been an accounting about this. It was never an issue in the presidential election. And I had called attention to this actually before the fact with that Kenny Bunkport warning, which was issued about 3 years ago this month. So that was the last time we were on the brink of war. After that, we had the December 2007 National Intelligence Estimate, which said, and this is the CIA, we state with great confidence that Iran has no nuclear weapons program. They had one up until 2003, but not anymore. Now, all of that has changed, and I would point to, in particular, the increased financial desperation of London and New York, right? They had been attempting now for the last year or so to stage a speculative attack on the euro. They were attacking through the Greek bonds, the Spanish, Portuguese, and other government bonds, and they got a significant crisis going on that in April and May. But then that attack has now broken down, partly because of the German self-defense measures, right? Germany came forward and said, we're banning naked credit default swaps, we're banning naked shorts against German stocks. And I think very important, China supported the euro. The Chinese were not prepared to see the U.S. and the British destroy the euro. So China came in and began buying up Eurozone assets, and that had the effect of supporting the euro. So what we've had is an attempted blitzkrieg by the Anglo-Americans against the euro, which has now broken down. The high point of this was around the flash crash. Remember the May 6th event when the Dow lost 1,000 points in about 10 or 15 minutes.